Hey everyone, thank you so much for the introduction, Lane. Thanks for Danny and all the organizers finding us time to come and speak to you about bringing ESG to crypto and values-based index. My name is Maggie Love. I'm going to be moderating the panel. The two things I do in crypto, I work on an infrastructure project called Web3 Cloud, and then I also educate women and onboard them into the community through a program called SheFi. And so we're here to introduce you to something that we're all working on together and hope to get you excited about it and collaborate with us on it. I'm going to moderate, so first I'm going to have all the panelists introduce themselves.
Thanks, Maggie. Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Podrx. I'm running a project called Eve Wealth, which is the first wealth DAO. So we focus on-chain investment and education, onboarding women, especially from the TradFi world.
Hey, my name is Rebecca Mkamelo. I lead the growth team at Zerion, which is a DeFi aggregator. I also have a background in doing community currency research, so looking at the intersection of universal basic income and crypto, and working with these amazing women on bringing ESG to crypto.
Hello, my name is Joy Sulini. I'm the co-founder of Investera. We're an education community that's helping bringing those that are underrepresented into the space by developing good UX and tech solutions with education as an on-ramp. My background is in financial inclusion in emerging markets.
Great, so the first question I have, and all these women are working on this values-based index token, so any of you can really answer the question. But why did you decide to tackle this problem? Or what were you trying to accomplish? What sparked the idea?
Yeah, happy to kick off. So what I think is super interesting is it actually started off as a coming together of amazing women in the space. So it was actually 10 of the top female crypto educators, investors, just meeting together and realizing that there's this onboarding problem, and in particular, this barrier to entry that often has to do with values. A lot of the women and non-binary or underrepresented folks that we spend a lot of time educating and onboarding, we're really looking for guidance and curation. And we were spending a lot of time doing that. So we thought, what better thing to do than come together and actually help try to come up with a point of view on what that could look like, what the criteria could be, and how to help guide the people that we're focused on helping the best way possible. So these are just 4 of us, but there are 10 total representation from SheFi, Women in Blockchain, and many other great organizations.
Okay, great. So we're trying to solve the problem of bringing more values-based investing into crypto. And to date, what have you been doing to try to define what those values are?
So I think that there are a couple of things. When we talk about values investing, a really good place to start is to look at what's happening in traditional finance and take from the context there, which is that you've seen this wave of retail investment becoming a lot easier for people. So think of apps like Robinhood, Coinbase. But the next generation, or the next question in that really is, what are people investing in and why, right? So access is one thing, but then the kinds of investments you're making is another. And what we see is that ESG-style products have become increasingly popular. The size of the market has grown almost exponentially in the last couple of years, and I think Joy can speak to that a little bit more. But when we think about how it applies to crypto, the first obvious things would be looking at diversity of your teams, right? So who's in your leadership? How many of your employees are either women, people of color, minorities? And then another one that would be really obvious is climate impact. And this is super exciting because there's so much going on in crypto right now around regenerative finance, looking at things like carbon markets. But when we talk about values, I mean, that's really broad, and I think that's something that people also define for themselves. And so we envision a world where that can really open up beyond these 2 categories. And that's part of what we're doing and sort of learning in public is really getting that feedback from the crypto community and asking, what are the things that we could be categorizing as values-based investing in this space? Because so much is still being defined, and that's a really exciting playground to work with. But I'd also really love to hear from Joy on just what more has been happening in ESG in general in traditional finance.
Yeah, so I think if we zoom out a bit and look at why would we tackle this through index funds, if you look at TradFi and what happened there, index funds allowed people to see it as a low barrier entry to investing and something's well diversified, lower risk. So we saw massive movement of retail investors into index funds. And then with ESG, which has been around since the early 2000s, it only gained traction like in about 2019, where the volume quadrupled. There's a couple reasons for that, but you saw a lot more women and millennials getting into the space and demanding, wanting to know, like, I want to invest, but only in a way that aligns with my values. So it's time now for the time is right, to index funds to enter into the crypto world. And right now, you mostly have to be an accredited investor in order to be able to participate in centralized crypto index funds. Decentralized exchanges, though, provide that opportunity for anyone to get involved. And right now, there is not a crypto index fund that looks at values-based investing. And so we don't want to wait 2 decades like TradFi did. We want to start having this conversation now. And we up here, we don't have the answers yet. This is a work in progress. We're very much making it a community solution project and inviting people from the community to contribute.
And so I guess what projects or like what tokens were you looking to include into this index fund, or like what areas have you examined and kind of like what have you learned from trying to like understand like how to pick the types of projects to put in this fund?
Yeah, it's been a journey of like learning and figuring out how to choose and figure out the criteria, because data right now is super limited. It's also limited in the traditional financial space. So companies like Diversio have manually created their rankings and listing for their Fortune 500 evaluations. So we kind of took that same approach, saying we wanted to start somewhere, like collecting the information and seeing what data was available, what part was automated, what was not. And when we thought about the methodology, we looked at things like followership on Twitter, what percentage were female using different social media analytics tools. We also looked at GitHub contributors. We looked at scraping LinkedIn data to look at employee gender equality, and then even women on leadership teams. So it was actually a manual process of the community coming together to create those scores for each of those dimensions, and then rank by market cap each of the protocols on how they were performing on things like planet and people. And from there, we start to look at the composition of what would that look like for a layer 1 protocol to give people exposure to a basket of protocols that they could feel good about. So we had a first proposal. The planet and people combination was a lot, and also a lot to market, and would be a lot to maintain from a data standpoint. So we're in this evaluation process and definitely building in public to get ideas of what that could look like, and we'll be publishing the results of the scores that we've already started to pull in. And then we also did try to look at women-led DeFi protocols, and we came up with 10. So we did scour the Twitter sphere for that, and very proud to know that there are projects like Open and Apricot and Enzyme. But obviously, if you guys know of some, we would love to get some feedback, and we actually have an open survey live right now to collect contributors, to work on naming, and to also really aggregate more data, more sources of protocols that we should be considering.
So if you want to get involved, you can help us collaborate on our survey. Let us know what you care about, what you'd like to see in a values-based index. Sounds like we're leaning towards layer 1 protocols to include in it. And I'm curious, how do you think about balancing the values, the ESG, with also like performance of some of these assets? How are you thinking about that when you are building this product?
So yeah, this is something that we thought about really strongly as we were putting together the methodology. And obviously we had the exact same criteria that you might use in any other index, right? So looking at market cap, looking at things like volatility. I mean, you can get really creative when you look into DeFi indexes and the kinds of strategies that people are using. And so we don't see that as being any different. We still apply those methodologies. The difference is that we're changing things like weighting based on certain criteria. And I think that what's really interesting about this question is that there is an underlying challenge of where does the data come from in the first place. So Alana told you that we were looking at things like Twitter followers and your percentage of your leadership team that's women, and I think she's kind of brushing over how difficult that was.
Like completely manual.
Yeah, it is a completely manual process. Some of the times half the team is anonymous, so we don't know if there's a woman on your leadership team. Employee data that's not on LinkedIn. And so an underlying question to all of this is, how do we standardize making this information more accessible to people, right? There is a precedent of when people know what the sustainability criteria or sustainability impact or leadership is on a team, they will move money. So when Morningstar published climate metrics for the first time in 2018, $15 billion moved away from mutual funds that were not classified as sustainable towards ones that were. And I think that this just points to the need for that data to be available in the first place, and how do we standardize that for protocols and token projects. I mean, that's kind of like this two-pronged challenge that we're trying to rise to, because it doesn't seem that anyone else is doing it.
Yeah, and I just want to reinforce, this is not for like a check the box sort of thing. Like, studies have shown the financial benefits from an investment perspective in TradFi of those projects that are mindful towards ESG, including diversity and equity. It brings big financial returns, and there's a big impact on the bottom line. So performance and doing good is not mutually exclusive, and we want to be talking about that now in this space and making sure it's not just checking boxes.
And we see that with our communities, right? Like, we're all leaders of communities of people who are onboarding in, and this is not a checkbox for them. This is a requirement a lot of the time for them to even consider making a first investment, is understanding the climate impact, understanding the people, planet, profit equation.
And so, in your research so far, and people who've responded to your initial survey, because you were saying eventually we'd like to tackle all of the areas of ESG, but maybe not for the first iteration. What have you found that people are saying, like these people that care about certain values, like what is coming out as maybe something people want to prioritize now versus later, or how are you what has that feedback been?
Yes. Well, still collecting a lot of information, so I want to share that it is still open and would love to get more feedback. But we have had, multiple hundreds of people complete the survey so far. And the thing that's really interesting is understanding how things enter public consciousness first, right? I think 2017, we started seeing the conversation around carbon credits and crypto. So clearly that's just become more popularized. And we've seen that in the survey, right? The first highest interest ESG problem that people want to tackle in an index fund are protocols that look at planet. So Climate DAO's done a lot of effort there. We've seen some really great initiatives with Toucan. The thing is that the market cap and the liquidity for those tokens right now make the profit equation more difficult. So, us going and back testing and seeing what would that look like in constructing this index. We obviously originally felt like it would be great to do something with a gender equality lens, right? Because we were all coming from communities with that in mind, but really focused on more just creating a really great basket of layer ones that could be something that we could offer to our communities, and it be designed with a feminine lens. So yeah, I think to answer the question, the results so far are that the gender equality thing maybe isn't sufficient, and I think partially right now that's because an ETH address doesn't have a gender, and maybe we're even trying to move beyond into a post-gender world, but still I think we're seeing definitely a huge amount of momentum and interest in values-based basket index products, and that's where we're really excited to play a role in collecting the data to decide what that looks like.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier. A big part of this is curation, right? So we all have experience onboarding, educating women and non-binary folks new people to crypto specifically. Like a lot of our work is bringing more people into this space, and a big part of that is, facilitating that. We are experts and we have put work into this, so allowing people to kind of, get exposed to crypto and maybe through like a lens that they understand more, like values, and then over time maybe learn some more like the nitty gritties of like the different layer ones. I think that's going to be super powerful in onboarding people. And we only have a few minutes left, so I guess I want to kind of touch on how can people get involved into this process, how you have a name, I know, and a Twitter, so if some of you want to start getting people involved, if this interests you, thinking about valuing protocols and values, we're definitely want to collaborate with everybody and would love to see more interest. So I'll let you guys take it away.
Yeah, so the first place to start would be follow us on Twitter. We are at Values Index, spelt as it's pronounced. And we do currently have our market survey that is still up. We really want to maximize the number of people who are answering that. So we've been sharing it in our own communities, but we want to get in feedback from the DeFi native crowd. We want to get feedback from the power users, from the newbies, from the NFT artists. I mean, this really is an effort that is for everyone. And I think, we've mentioned this a couple of times, but we are really doing this in public. We are learning in public. We are building in public. And we are doing it because we've seen this immense community demand for something that is aligned with values. So when we tell our friends, hey, invest in crypto, and they ask us, how do I invest in something that is aligned with my values on climate and diversity, we don't want to just hear crickets. We want to give them something. And that is what we're doing. So fill out that survey. There's also a contributor interest form. We're going to be sharing some of the conversations that we have, and we're just really looking to engage with anyone who's interested in this topic.
I would also add to that if you are part of a project that is having these kind of discussions, please come talk to us, because we did a lot of digging and it was really hard to find that kind of information. So we want to hear what you're doing, what's in development, so we can put you on the platform to acknowledge what you're doing.
Great, and just to close it out, I guess maybe one person can answer, you can all give your own perspective, but like what are you really hoping to achieve with this ESG values-focused index token?
Yeah, maybe we can each cover. I think for our community in particular, I definitely want to be able to lead people to a destination that they can feel good about, and not knowing that this doesn't exist right now is really motivating to come together with an incredible group of female leaders to develop something that we can feel good about sharing, and to be leaders in the space to create something really new.
I think getting the message out there that you don't have to compromise like performance expectations or your values. And what I'm really excited about that isn't in TradFi is the ability to be able to turn like these index funds into tokens that then you can actually utilize the utility behind that. And I think that's going to draw a lot of attention and bring a lot of interest to this space.
And I think this is me personally, but we probably share this, is that money is power and information is power. And so being able to translate that information in the way that people invest is really important. We can educate as much as we like and expand the community as much as we like. We want to see money moving in the right places. We want to see money moving towards projects that are practicing better diversity standards, that are practicing better sustainability standards. And so we use this as a vehicle to shift the narrative, not just for anyone who's interested in the index, but for the standard that we set for this industry as a whole.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us. I guess I'll have us say our names one more time so you can find us. My name is Maggie Love.
Alana Podrx.
Rebecca Mkamelo.
Joy Sulini.
Yeah, and contact us, reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd love to answer, or if you're interested in collaborating. Thanks so much.